Hello ladies and gentlemen, Stephen here from Redolessence and welcome back to another video. I hope this video finds you well. And in today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at one of the most recent releases by the company Duo Fragrances, and this one is called Intellect Attar, so make sure to stay tuned. Now before I begin the video, I do want to give a shout out to my daughter who insisted that I wear this Paw Patrol shirt today. It actually just says Dad Patrol. We wore this on her second birthday. But I also want to make mention of the fact that this product was sent to me for review by the company. But as always, I'm going to keep it real with you guys. If I don't like it, I don't like it. And the good news is that with a lot of their original releases, I actually end up liking them. And so I ended up reviewing one, I believe it was last month. It was called Intimacy, and I really enjoy that one. It's kind of like a boozy, creamy, vanillic, resinous sort of a scent. And then this one I know has notes of like violet, tobacco, brandy, roasted tonka beans, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the smell later on. And so this brand does put out an original release from time to time. They'll also release hybrids of more popular fragrances, and so I've expressed interest to the owner of the company, Masam Raza, and I let him know that I am more interested in reviewing those hybrids and the original releases as opposed to the clones, just because if I've reviewed the original, then I'm going to end up saying much of the same thing when I review the clone as well. And so let's get started. Now this one is a sprayable attar, which basically means that it's really highly concentrated. I think I saw somewhere online somebody mentioned that it was like 70% or something concentration of oil, so it is a super high concentration, and I know that the price kind of reflects that too. And so this one is selling for $80 for a 30 milliliter bottle. However, as an original creation, I do find it to be very well done. I like a lot of the notes that are included in here. There might be some descriptors that, will have to cater to your personal taste, so make sure you stay tuned throughout the entire video so you know if this is something that will resonate with you. But before I start talking about the smell, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the presentation. So I apologize to those of you who have seen a Duo review on my channel in the past. I think if you've seen one, you've seen them all in regarding to their box presentation. You just have the Arabic writing here on the front. It opens up just like this. There's some information on the company on the left-hand side if you want to pause your screen and read it at your own pace. And then of course the bottle rests in there on the right. The concentration is written on the spine of the box, and the back of the box has the size, the concentration, and the ingredients. The bottle for this one does have this gold metal plaque here on the front, just says Intellect Attar towards the bottom. I think it's a very nice looking plaque. The cap for this fragrance does click into place very securely. You can pick it up from the cap. And being as though this is a sprayable attar, just take a look at the distribution. It's nice and wide, but it does have the potential of coming across very oily due to the high concentration. Let's continue with the smell. Now I know that earlier on in this review I made mention of the fact that this is a sprayable attar. It's even in the name, Intellect Attar, and what that basically means is an attar is a perfume without alcohol. Now of course there is alcohol in this one, albeit in very small amounts, but this one is to be used the same way that you use an attar. And so I was actually on their website prior to shooting this video, and the website discourages users from spraying this on clothing. And so because of the high concentration, especially with their other fragrance, which is called Intimacy, it's a very dark colored juice that's found inside the bottle. And so if you spray it on a shirt, especially a light colored shirt, it will stain your clothing. And so do not spray this one on clothing. And it even encourages you to lightly rub it in to activate the molecules. And so let's just go ahead and get into the smell, but just a word of caution there, do not spray this one on skin. Okay, so as soon as this one opens up, and truth be told, I sprayed it on here about 5 minutes ago, but as soon as it opens up, it does come across a little powdery. Now, I think the powdery nuance is more along the clean side as opposed to like the powdery, floral, aldehydic, feminine side. And I know a lot of people tend to associate floral and aldehydic perfumes with women's fragrances, and the good news is that that's not the case here. Or if that's what you were looking for, then for you it would be bad news. But I don't get anything feminine or feminine leaning from this fragrance, and so it does cater to my personal taste for that reason. So it does open up a little bit powdery, and I think that may be on account of the violet that's used in here. I know there's a leather accord used in here as well, but I'm not getting much of it. You know, when I sprayed this one on my skin in the dry down, it did start to get a little bit creamy, and I would venture to say that that creaminess is on account of a couple different ingredients, perhaps A, the tonka bean, and B, the guaiac wood with the sandalwood. And so you have a combination of different woodsy notes that are used in the base, and I would say the sandalwood is probably a little bit stronger than the guaiac wood, because on my skin it actually does end up smelling a little bit creamy in addition to that powdery opening that I got. Now, I do get a lot of that tonka bean, and it says roasted tonka bean. So here's where I was confused a little bit, because whenever I think of roasted tonka bean, I think of like Baccarat Rouge or many of its inspirations, but that's not necessarily what I'm getting here. No aspect of this fragrance smells like Baccarat Rouge to me. For me, this would be a closer comparison to like Tonka by Commodity or Fève Délicieuse by Christian Dior. It kind of has that similar tonka bean note, but it's not as sweet. This is not a gourmand scent to me. I know I looked on their website and it actually calls this a chypre fragrance, and sure enough there is oak moss in the base, so you do have that verdant element sitting underneath everything else, kind of like lifting everything else up. But this one doesn't have too strong of a chypre element. It's really more so about that creamy, woodsy base, a little bit of violet just to clean things up, make it a little bit masculine as well, although I do find this one to be perfectly unisex. I just don't think it's explicitly feminine in any way. And I do get that really nice, enveloping, and slightly sweet tonka bean note. So if you're a fan of the tonka bean that's used in Christian Dior's Fève Délicieuse, but you want something that's not as sweet, I would definitely recommend checking this one out. If you are just not a fan of powdery fragrances in general, I would recommend steering clear of this one. However, if you are a fan of very strongly concentrated fragrances, including notes like guaiac wood, sandalwood, tonka bean, and violet, as well as a little bit of citrus in the opening. I mean, I know it says grapefruit, but I didn't get anything overly tart or anything like that, so I don't know necessarily how much grapefruit is used in here. And I know the other note or accord that is listed in the note breakdown is brandy. And so I don't drink brandy, but I do know what it smells like because I have smelled it before. And it's hard to say that there's anything overly boozy or overly alcoholic about this fragrance. I know especially when compared to another one of their original creations, which is called Intimacy, that one does come across rather boozy on my nose. I kind of compared it a little bit, not entirely to Baraonda by Nasomato, but it's done in a very different way. It's much more ambery. And so this one doesn't have as much alcohol in it. And maybe the fact that it's an attar kind of takes away from the fact that, you know, one would have perceived more alcohol in it had it not been a sprayable attar. But truth be told, it is a very strongly concentrated perfume. It is one that I have tried on my skin. I wore it maybe like 2 or 3 days in the past month because I've had this one for a while. So I do apologize to Mr. Raza for getting this video out a little bit late, a little later than I had promised him I would shoot it, but I do enjoy this one, and this is one that I can certainly see myself wearing on a regular basis just because there's nothing about this fragrance that is offensive, and this is one that is also intriguing. So it doesn't quite smell like anything else that I've gotten my nose on. So let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, I would say this fragrance earns points for both of those categories. One, I do find it to be unique. I can't quite compare it to any other fragrance out there. Maybe there's a subtle similarity to Fève Délicieuse or Tonka by Commodity, but I think we've seen that a lot of fragrances that utilize that, what is it, like a Venezuelan tonka bean note, they kind of give off a similar vibe and a similar olfactory profile, and I see that being the case with this one as well. However, this one is a bit more powdery, it's definitely creamy in the base, and it has a lot of nuances and facets that aren't found in any of the other fragrances that I referenced throughout the course of this review. In terms of the longevity of this fragrance, it is nuclear, so I get about 10 hours whenever I do spray this one on skin, and this is one where you really have to scrub to get it off, keeping in mind that the concentration for this one is very, very high. The projection on this one is very good, but I don't think it ever radiated beyond an arm's length, and so it doesn't have too many of those volatile citrus notes up on top that would make this one like a beast mode performer, but it's definitely not a skin scent. It doesn't actually start to mellow out until about that 7.5 to 8 hour mark, so the performance performance for this one is way above average. Now the versatility for this one, so it's a mixed bag here, and I think that, you know, for me personally, this is one that I can see myself wearing all year round. So I definitely pick up on that woodsy component. I pick up on a little bit of the violet, a little bit of the lavender that's used in here. So a lot of those ingredients are reminiscent of the spring and the fall, but I think because it's a sprayable attar and it's so deeply concentrated, I can definitely wear this one in the winter time as well. As a matter of fact, I have the test strip about a foot away from my nose here, and I'm smelling it loud and clear. And so it's a testament as to how well this one performs. And so I would wear this one in the winter time. If you are going to wear this one in the dead of summer, please don't do more than like 2 or 3 sprays. I think one on each wrist with maybe a slight dab behind the ear is enough to secure the lasting power of this fragrance throughout the entire workday. I see this one being perfectly unisex, and I think that this is one that I would wear dressed up as well as on a casual basis. Now, I know a lot of people will probably think that $80 for 30 milliliters is a little bit too much. I mean, I personally know of a lot of brands that have 30 milliliter fragrances and they're selling them for close to $200. So I would say when keeping in mind the concentration of this fragrance, the way that it smells, the quality of ingredients, I don't think that that's too much to pay. But if you insist on waiting until they run a promotion on their website, then I could completely understand that as well. Lastly, in terms of the presentation, I do think it's a nice presentation. I think there's a collector's appeal to a lot of the fragrances, especially when you put them on the side and you see the different labels. And I know this one has the metal plaque on the front, which is I think it's reserved for some of their more exclusive inspirations or some of their original releases like Intimacy or Flagship, both of which I own, and I actually took Flagship with me on vacation when I went on a cruise over the summer, and I enjoyed that one thoroughly. But in any case, thank you so much for tuning in. That was my review of this fragrance by Dua, and this is called Intellect Attar. Is it an intellectual fragrance? I think in the way that it's pieced together, I do find it to be quite a brilliant composition, and so I do want to certainly thank Mr. Raza for providing me with a bottle for review. Thank you for the opportunity. It really does mean a lot to me. So my final verdict on this fragrance is it's a solid original release. You know, I would always encourage people to try the original releases from a lot of these companies that make their own version of more popular designer and niche fragrances. I know sometimes they're discontinued, but in the case of their original creations, I do think that this is where the talent and the creativity shines, and I would personally like to see a lot more of that, and I have absolutely no issue endorsing such products. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new to this channel and you took something of value from this video, I would love to know what you think. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. I would really appreciate that, and also please support the channel by subscribing to it. Just click that red button in the corner. Make sure to enable notifications. This way, whenever I do upload future fragrance related content, it will get delivered straight to your feed. You never need to worry about missing any of my future videos, and of course that includes fragrance reviews just like this, giveaways, unboxings, top 10 videos, interviews, special guests, announcements, and a whole lot more. Thanks again for watching. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Bye.